And joining us is Nikhil Pava and Kumardeep Banerjee on the broadcast. Kumar, if I were to come to you quickly, tell us, so much seems to be about power sharing and power concentration when it comes to the telecom bill, whereas I thought the thought was about regulating telecommunication services and telecommunication related services, if I may.
That's right. I completely agree with my friend Nikhil Pava, who has been talking about some of these freedoms or some of the privileges, or let's say some of the rights that have been enjoyed by many on the digital highway, or so-called the digital India or digital Bharat platforms. But many questions remain unanswered. For example, I don't know whether Nikhil has taken a look at it, but telecommunication services, according to the bill, is being defined as anything, any service which is related to telecommunications. Now, what are telecommunication services? That is left to the interpretation of the courts, if you may, at a future point of time. That is one of the critical aspects that I'm worried about, and which is why I said that the definitions are left too wide. Secondly, we are not too sure whether this bill is open for public consultation or will be open for public consultation, because the last time we had a look at this bill was somewhere somewhere last year, which Nikhil mentioned, but we haven't been able to really being part of this conversation. So the second ask from the government, the first ask being that give textual in writing kind of definitions of what are telecommunication services, so that there are no ambiguities. B, open it up for consultation, since there are only 4 days left for the parliament and there are still ambiguities whether it's a money bill or whether it's a finance bill, whether it needs a more wider consultation or not. If you ask me, we definitely need a wider consultation, and that's what we are pitching for.
Right, wider consultation is needed, but then the clock is ticking as far as the parliament sessions are concerned.
Sure, and I agree with Kumardeep. Krishna, I think the definitions have to be watertight. Otherwise, it leaves a lot to imagination, ambiguity and interpretation by different players. In fact, when you do a Control F in that long 46-page bill, the word internet appears just once used in internet protocol. So telecommunications is a wide gamut of, of terminologies which need to be defined well.
Right, needs to be better defined. Nikhil, I know you put your hand up. The question I have to ask is that, is this new telecom bill setting us up for more and more litigation going forward in that sense?
I think there's going to be a bit of a problem even before it goes into litigation, to be honest, because, just look at the breadth of how messaging is defined. And the telecommunication services includes messages, basically. It says any sign, signal, writing, text, image, sound, video, data stream, which basically means everything on the internet.
True.
So if that is all telecommunication, and anyone who's providing these services is regulated under this bill and requires government permission to operate, it basically means that every app in this country requires government permission to operate. Will need to go through an authorization framework. Let's remember, authorization means you need to be in a whitelist. You need to be approved. So you can't. So a student in a village can't just launch an app that, let's say, allows you and me to message with each other. It needs to go through a process. The other interesting part is there's one section of the bill that requires verifiable biometric authentication. And let's not forget the definition of messaging here also includes email. So will I need to do Aadhaar authentication to send an email from now on? I mean, it's utterly ridiculous, right? There's another aspect which Airtel had raised in its TRAI consultation filing, and this is a very pro-Airtel bill, to be honest, because also satellite communication is not going to be, spectrum is not going to be auctioned, and that's something which Airtel was pushing for as opposed to Jio, which wanted auctions. But let's go back to, in its submission, Airtel says that Paytm, which allows two people to message each other even if they're not making a payment, that should not be seen as incidental messages, and that should be seen as a messaging service. So which means in order to allow people, even Paytm will have to get a telecom license to operate. What kind of a message does this send to digital India? I think, this and the verifiable biometric authentication bit is a very, very strong signal to the internet ecosystem, to startup founders, to take their business out of the country. because there are far more liberal environments to operate in. And today, people go where there is business. The Web3 ecosystem moved lock, stock, and barrel to Dubai because it's a more welcoming ecosystem for Web3, whereas India shut that down. So,
But Nikhil, I doubt
think
that
this
is going to
mission-
help. We've seen TikTok, for example, no matter where the company is based out of, as long as it is offering services in India, the government can seize control and can actually tell them to pack up and go home.
Correct. But these are not Chinese services, right? In China, the companies actually can't challenge the Communist Party. The Chinese intelligence law requires that companies can be commandeered by the Chinese government in the interest of national security. There's a similar clause, by the way, in this bill, which allows the government of India to take over any telecommunications equipment, and that could even be an email service provider here.
Right.
So how different are we from a Chinese law perspective?
Very true.
And that's why countries are looking to ban TikTok, because it can be controlled by the Chinese government. That fate is going to be there for Indian companies as well that want to go global. So we need to be very careful about how we're operating. We're in an open internet environment where everyone needs to be free to build the business that they want to build, compete in a global marketplace without government interference when it comes to the integrity of the platform. Here, the integrity becomes suspect.
Okay, the integrity becomes suspect is the word coming from Nikhil Pava. Nikhil Pava, Kumardeep Banerjee, we can continue having this conversation, and we will continue having this conversation, but for as far as this particular show is concerned, I'm afraid we've completely run out of time. Thank you, Kumar, and thank you, Nikhil, for taking time out to be with us here on Business Plus. The only other thing that we want you to know on this edition of Business Plus has got to do with the finances of all the state governments in India, because according to Shamika Ravi, member of the Prime Minister's Economic Advisory Council and the RBI, which put out the state's financial health report, many states in India have an extremely high debt to GDP ratio. In fact, the overall debt of all states combined is set to go up 9%, going further to over 87 lakh crore rupees. So how well are states' finances being managed? Are the right states being given the funds, and are they putting those funds for the right use? Those are the big questions that come up when you look at that data. Karthik Malhotra continues to be with us. Karthik, we always discuss, what is the levels of GDP that every state puts out. That is a isolated number. If you have a high GDP, fantastic. The more important part is, are you being able to generate that high GDP with as little debt as possible?
Absolutely. I think it's a question of how are you financing your growth. A state like Kerala, for example, which has an higher than average growth rate, GDP growth rate, still has a much higher than average debt, which is financing that growth. Now, what really happens in this entire process, Krishna, is that you've taken this debt from the central government. That debt doesn't come for free, doesn't come very cheap either. So there is an interest that you pay to the center over that debt, which restricts your ability to plow back that money into real development, and development to create jobs, and development to actually further bolster your growth.
All right, we have Mr. Srinath Sridharan joining us live on this broadcast. Srinath, I think we're going to stop discussing this amongst ourselves and help. You've been, researching this. You've even written pieces for us. You're doing a two-part series for our news9live.com website as well. Tell us from your perspective, from where you sit, how do you view the state's finances? Because the finger is being raised against states like Kerala, which have an extremely high debt to GDP ratio.
So, Krishna, a little controversial statement. It depends on which finger is being raised. In the mainstream reaction, right? That's a challenge. Most of the states have been announcing schemes, grand schemes, almost populist schemes, without, I think, worrying about the consequence of these debt. End of the day, the states have to continue repaying these. And one of the interesting aspects is the state GDP is a direct correlation to amount of money that the states can borrow. And I think somewhere the Finance Commission, the 16th Finance Commission that is to be formed soon, I think is going to have an actual issue on hand. How are they going to actually negotiate with each of the states to reduce such a limit? Because otherwise states just are getting reckless without building a revenue moat of sorts. Most of the states, like you said, Kerala or Punjab, have been living off on the conventional revenue streams they've had for years. Let's say tourism, in Punjab's case, agriculture. But are they becoming competitive? And the challenge is you also have to compete within the other Indian states and union territories to attract, whether it's investments or talent. And the reason why I'm saying talent is very important. without talent, you don't get the share of the GST of the services that they will use in those states.
Right, Srinath, stay with us. Since we're talking so much about Kerala, we thought we'll get somebody from Kerala to get some perspective. We have the former Finance Minister of Kerala, Mr. Thomas Isaac, now joining us on this edition of Business Plus. Mr. Thomas Isaac, thank you so much for taking time out to be with us. Simple question: do you agree with this hypothesis that Kerala's finances have not been maintained properly? In fact, one of the the least maintained well of the states in the country.
Now, nothing too much need to be drawn from this. For the simple reason, there's a National Fiscal Responsibility and Budget Management Act. And therefore, if a state has higher than national average debt servicing ratio today, it only means the impact of legacy debt, which over time, because now no states can borrow more than 3%. The ratio in the long run would come down. There is nothing to be so worried about. In fact, if you look at the ratio, the trend in your graph, you will find for Punjab, Kerala, and all these states, 5 states, where debt ratio is relatively higher, or the fact that the legacy debt is relatively higher interest rate. But this is a temporary phenomenon because the basic borrowing, current borrowing and future borrowing is limited to 3%. It will come down automatically unless they are all going to break the law, which is not possible. You cannot borrow without sender's permission. Therefore, I think there is nothing to be worried about. But we should take note of this and keep your watch. That's all.
Okay, we shouldn't make too much of this latest set of data. Srinath, would you agree with that, not to make too much out of it, and then the levels of borrowing will only come down going forward, according to Mr. Thomas Isaac?
See, I think hope cannot be a strategy, right? Especially around financial and economic matters. I'm not a politician, so I don't have to promise any electorate or anything. The reality is, if you spend more than you can earn, you are going to be running into trouble. So it's as simple as whether it's a personal finance matter or the state finance matter. And most of our states have lived on legacy and borrowed money. They'll have to figure out, can they be attractive as a destination either for investors or for visitors or tourists like Kerala or Goa for that matter. And how are they going to continue attracting newer people to come back again and again and spend money with them? It's as simple as that. But yet it is very, very challenging because states have conventionally thought, if I provide roads, if I provide education, if I set up hospitals and colleges, things will
That's exactly what
shape
Kerala
up
has
beautifully.
done.
It is just not going to achieve at all, right? I mean, every state does not have equal resources, natural or man-made, and that's a reality. And each of the state has a unique competitiveness that they have to leverage for their own growth.
Right,
I mean,
right.
Kerala has, let's say, Ayurveda or tourism, beautiful, but can they scale it any further? The reality is, if you're creating a strategy for a corporate, you will figure out that at some point in time, your numbers will plateau. You can't say it will constantly grow like a hockey stick effect all the time.
Srinath, that's right. Let's take it back to Mr. Thomas Isaac and let's understand from him that this money which needs to be invested back for larger growth, where should this money really be invested? Should Kerala now move away from traditional sectors and look at sectors like manufacturing or IT for that matter to actually reap the dividends of growth?
Well, let me put it this way. Last 2 years, the own revenues of the state government in Kerala has increased by 22% per annum. That is an astounding pace of growth. Now that GST has become operational, it has just become operational only now. In the sense, Kerala is dependent upon IGST more than SGST. Because 70% of our consumables are being imported from other states. But the e-way bill system and so on has come into being in the firm only in the last, say, 2 years back.
Right.
And now I am very confident, optimistic about Kerala's buoyant own revenue growth, particularly if the central government is willing to tweak back a bit of the tax rate which they reduced in 2019 before the Lok Sabha election. If that is not fully restored, at least tweaked, I think state of Kerala, I'm sure, is going to have a much more buoyant revenue. Therefore, I look forward to the medium period as a phase of fiscal consolidation for the state. That's my expectation about Kerala.
All right, that was Mr. Thomas Isaac, former Finance Minister of the state of Kerala, joining us here on Business Plus. I'm afraid we've completely run out of time here with that. Thank you, Mr. Thomas Isaac, for joining us. And of course, thank you, Mr. Sridharan, for joining us and giving us your perspective on the health, the financial health of states in the country. We are slipping into a short breather over here on the programming on News 9 Live. Here's a quick programming note on an important documentary that we're running on News 9 Plus. Pakistan is training women to act as intelligence operatives and trap influential Indians. They seek confidential information in lieu of sexual favors. Experts warn defense personnel and scientists not to seek love in the virtual realm. They've also asked the government to closely monitor the sale of Indian SIM cards. Take a look at this. Thank you so much for watching. This is Krishna Kumar signing off.
I recently received a friend request from Mahira Sharma. Now, we seem to have a lot of friends in common on social media, particularly from the military veterans community. But something about her didn't quite add up. So we decided to investigate. Now, honey traps as an espionage tool are nothing new. They've been around for centuries. But Pakistan's ISI, their spy agency, has been perfecting honey traps in the virtual space. Our story takes you inside Pakistan's honey trap machine.
Mahira Sharma, a young, good-looking woman in her 20s. Her Facebook profile said she was a clerk in a nationalized bank in Pune. Our editor's profile picture had an Air Force aircraft. He had several former military officers in his friends list. Mahira Sharma had 62 friends, all of them males and many of them serving and retired military and government officials. We began our investigation. We found 3 more Facebook accounts with the exact same profile picture and name. Another Facebook profile, Gauri Sharma, had the same work profile as Mahira. That confirmed our suspicion that both accounts were fake. We decided to dig further. We first called the bank. They confirmed that no one by this name worked there. We then approached 2 of their followers and asked them whether they personally knew these women. They said they had never met them. It was not clear why they had accepted the friend request.
Our investigation led us to a list of honey trappers trained in Pakistan. Pakistani intelligence operatives run these fake accounts. They have only one target: Indian men in uniform. These women are trained to speak in Indian dialects.
Indian military intelligence officials confirmed to us that Mahira Sharma was one of hundreds of fake profiles created by Pakistan's intelligence agency, the ISI. She was the bait for a honey trap.
etc. We try to educate our people, but a lot of our journalists and a lot of our public professionals, etc., believe that they are not vulnerable, they have got nothing to hide. But what happens in something is, Mahira Sharma tries to approach me on LinkedIn, and if I find that she is connected to some famous editor whom I know, so my trust factor and the chance of me lowering the guard is very much there. So it is that one person, that one breach will lead to multiple other breaches. The trust factor is, oh, Mahira Sharma is friends with Sandeep Punditan, my friend. Okay, maybe she's, I take the first, and she says, Sandy said, I may not check back because Sandy is a big, busy man. So that's how it starts off.
जहाँ पे भी आपको लगेगा, उनको लगेगा कि there is a person who is susceptible to women, who's making a lot of women friends on the social media. That is where they will make a spoof account and then start luring the person. I have also got in my Twitter account. I'm only on the Twitter handle, and suddenly I have to literally report and block the particular handles. So the female will be there in a semi-nude. The beauty is, the AI works so well. How long have you looked at the photo? You just seen it and changed the